In this video, we are going to review adding and subtracting decimals. The directions are to find each sum or difference, sum when you're adding them and difference when you are subtracting them. So the way I'm going to have you do this might be a bit different than you're used to because you're going to start having your work done algebraically. And algebraically means down. So when I say work, there's going to be two kinds. There's the algebraic work done like an algebraic format, which really is not as hard as it sounds. And then there's the actual computation work. So for problem number one, I'm going to leave some space and I'm going to write 5 and 23 hundredths plus 8 and 3 tenths. And when adding and subtracting, I make sure that I line up the decimal points. So 5 and 23 hundredths. And I make sure my decimal for 8 and 3 tenths lines up. Now, these numbers do not go to the same place value. And when they do not go to the same place value, you put a zero placeholder to make sure they go to the same place value. Now, you do this because it's a good habit. Not because it's always needed, it's because it's sometimes needed. And if you always do it, then you don't have to worry about when you have to and when you don't have to add that zero placeholder. Once I've lined up my decimal point, I bring my decimal point straight down for adding and for subtracting. After that, I just add the numbers the way I would normally add numbers. 3 plus 0 is 3, 2 plus 3 is 5, and 5 plus 18 is 13, giving us an answer of 13 and 53 hundredths. Now, when I say write an answer algebraically, here's what I mean. The answer to 5 and 23 hundredths plus 8 and 3 tenths goes right underneath the problem. Actually, right underneath the plus sign. And then I box in my answer. That's it. I have my computation work down here. The algebraic work is just to put the answer right underneath where the two numbers were being added. Now I'm going to do another example, but this time with subtraction. The big thing is to make sure I line up my decimal points. So I write my first number, 15 and 49 hundredths, and then subtracting 4 and 8 tenths. Again, make sure you line up your decimal points. And if they do not go to the same place value, you add a zero to make sure they go to the same place value. Once I do that, I look at my decimal points. The decimal point in the answer comes straight down because adding and subtracting hold place values. You're basically lining up all the same place values. When I'm subtracting, the 9 minus 0 are both in the hundreds place. 9 minus 0 is 9. The 4 minus 8 are both in the tens place. 5 and 4 are both in the ones place. And the 1 is in the tens place. You only have to put zero placeholders in the decimal part to the right. You do not have to do that to the left. Now I just subtract the way I normally would, but I can't do 4 minus 8. I have to borrow the way I would always borrow. I take from the 5 and make it a 4, and the 4 in the tens place becomes 14. 14 minus 8 is 6. In the ones place, I have 4 minus 4 is 0. And in the tens place, we have 1 minus nothing is still 1. This is my computation work. Algebraic work is me taking that answer and putting it right underneath the minus sign. Even where I have it, I don't like it as much. It should be centered with the minus sign, not with the problem. And then you box in your answer. All right, we're going to do another example. Problem number 3. Problem number 3, again, I'm going to write my computation. I'm going to skip a few lines, write my work down a little bit lower. And I have 6 and 8 hundredths being added to 7 and 184 thousandths. Since they do not go to the same place value, I will put in a zero placeholder. Once all of my place values line up, I add them. Now, you don't have to know the place value names, but I think it's helpful to name things properly. So 0 plus 4 in the thousands place is just 4. 8 plus 8 in the hundreds place is 16. I'm going to carry the 1. So the 6 is down here, the 1 is here, that's the 16. When I add the tens place, 1 plus 0 plus 1 is 2. Sometimes I forget to bring the decimal point down first. You really are supposed to. But if you don't, it's not a big deal. I will now, oh, look, I see my decimal, and I'll bring the decimal straight down. Even if I didn't remember to do it first, I can still do it, and no one will ever know that I did it a little bit out of order. In the ones place, I have 6 plus 7, and that is 13, which means it carried over into the tens place a little bit. And then I take my answer, and your answer should be written centered with the plus sign. If it's not perfect, because I really don't think that one's perfect, it's fine, it's close. The last problem I'm going to do is a bit more complicated, but that has nothing to do with decimals. It just has to do with subtracting numbers. I'll do my computation work a little bit lower. I will write 46 and 700ths, minus 9 and 283 thousandths. They do not, the decimals, do not go to the same place value, so I will add a 0. And in this problem, it would have made a difference, because when I go to subtract my thousands place, 0 cannot minus 3, which means I have to borrow from the 7. So I will borrow from the 7. It becomes a 6. Remember, you borrow 1, it carries over. That gives me 10 of the 10 thousandths. You don't have to know that, just know to carry the 1 over. And I can do 10 minus 3 is 7. In the hundreds place, I cannot do 6 minus 8. I have to borrow again. I'll borrow from the 0. Well, I can't borrow from 0 because it's 0. I have to borrow from the 6. So we will borrow from the 6, it becomes a 5. And the 0 became a 10. Now I have something I can borrow from. I will borrow from the 10, it'll become a 9. And the 6 becomes a 16. 6 minus 8 is 8. In the tenths place, 9 minus 2 is 7. Again, I forgot the decimal, but I can do it now. Bring my decimal point straight down to hold all the place values. In the ones place, 5 minus 9, cannot do 5 minus 9, I have to borrow again. So the 4 becomes a 3, and the 5 becomes a 15. And I do 15 minus 9 is 6. And then in the tens place, we're left with 3 minus nothing is just 3. So that is our computation work. The only thing I'm really doing for algebraic work is writing my answer underneath the minus sign and boxing in the answer. Please remember, when adding and subtracting, the big thing for decimals is that you line up the decimal point. Once you line up the decimal point, you bring your decimal point straight down in your answer and just add or subtract the numbers like you normally would. Thank you.